Story 1. One of my scars is a triangle shape on my left-hand ring finger. I shot myself in the hand as a child by accident, and the bullet went straight through and left a scar from where they sewed the hole up. Story 2. Tripped and fell forward on uneven concrete while carrying a 1-year-old and took it like a hero. Bashed my knee and forehead while curling the rest of my body into a protective cocoon. Mission accomplished, baby unscathed. Story 3. The deep one is from a surgery to remove necrotic bone and tissue from sepsis. The thin one is from the surgery to reconstruct my collarbone after a sports utility vehicle hit me while I was bicycling. Story 4. Younger brother didn't give me ketchup. I called for mom, and he bashed my head with the ketchup bottle made of glass. The glass didn't break, but my head did. I was 13 and he was 11, I guess. Story 5. I have others as an adult which are due to adult issues. But for me, the most important one was when a glass bottle dropped at a convenience store when I was a toddler, resulting in 3 whole stitches on my knee. No one's fault, it just happened. I don't remember a thing about any of it, but it was traumatic for others. I hear my mom fainted and my father sat outside while they stitched me up because he hated hospitals. I had a little scar that grew with me on my knee. It's very faint now, but I still smile when I notice it. Story 6. Upper face. My sister smashed a seesaw into it. Lower face. A dog jumped up over a fence and bit me. Fingers. I punched through a glass window as a child. Fingers part 2. I failed to open a beer bottle with a lighter. Eyebrow. Friend A threw a party. Friend A got drunk. Friend B shaved his eyebrow. Somehow, and the story is still not clear, Friend A became convinced that I did it and violently attacked me the next day, splitting my entire eyebrow open. Story 7. When I was 2, I put a blanket over my head and walked around with it on, right into one of those standing metal heaters. Typical 2-year-old behavior. Some are self-harm. Others are burns and cuts from working in the food industry. Story 8. One is from my childhood cat scratching me, right down the middle of my nose. One was from broken glass in the garbage I was taking out, on my wrist. A couple others are from myself when I was going through a rough time on my legs. Story 9. Cancer, cyst removal, osteoma removals, locked finger in a car door, electric sander, someone bumped my hand, put my finger in a metal toy, dog bit me, slid on floor, hockey floor. So illness, medical, or reckless accident. Story 10. 7-year-old me tried to jump onto the bumper of my father's truck with both feet at the same time in the rain. Missed. Scraped all the skin off my shins. Have 2 oddly symmetrical scars now. Story 11. Which one? I was run over by a car in my driveway when I was 4. I don't have a heel on one foot. It's a rough scar and looks flat on the back. I almost lost a big chunk of my leg and some of my face in a car accident. I have a large curved scar on my leg from that, as well as one on my face. Another time, my arm was sliced while cleaning around trash and recycling. Weirdly enough, they are all on the same side of my body. Story 12. Playing Lego Island in 1998 at age 8, I found the secret door to the secret level. I jumped for joy and ran around the room, slipped on a magazine, and went face first into the corner of a glass table. Story 13. Many scars everywhere, all stemming from too many years of heavy drug use and a loss of self-love. I have plans for tattoos on my legs to cover up the worst of them. Getting clean really is a completely consuming process of cleaning up all aspects of life. Story 14. Cutting open a package of food with a knife ended up cutting my finger, and there was a lot of blood, but I was able to get it to stop. I show the scar to people I don't like. It's on my middle finger. My piano teacher's dog bit my arm when I was 8. I've got chickenpox scars on my face. One good thing about getting older is that they seem to be relaxing a bit and getting less prominent. When I was 2, I learned about unstable equilibria by climbing on a rocking chair. Story 15. My little brother was swinging a section of garden hose at me as I rode laps around our driveway on my bike. The brass fixture was on the end, and he whacked me in the elbow with it. Sliced my elbow open and got his ass beat for a change. I should have gotten stitches, but it was the 1970s. A butterfly bandage was all I got. Story 16. While riding the bike, I accidentally penetrated my leg with a metal pipe while looking at it at the same time. I was bleeding because of a leech. I rate this experience a 10 out of 10. I never swam in the river again. Story 17. Which one? Left eyebrow. Fight. Left knuckle. Fight. Left shoulder. Surgery once, requires a second. Left bicep. Surgery once, requires a second. Left forearm. Surgery. Midline. Surgery 3 times. Left abdomen. Surgery twice. Story 18. One time my brother slammed the door on my chin. We were around 6 years old. Another time, a bad fall during a windsurfing session gave me 8 stitches in my scalp. I was 16, but the hair grew fine and I can cover it. I always used a helmet after that. Story 19. I got cat scratch fever. But my doctors didn't know what it was, so they decided to cut into the bump. On top of being one of the worst pains I've probably ever experienced, it left a pretty noticeable scar. Story 20. The big one on the top of my head is from a surgery. The large one on the back of my head and behind my ear is from another surgery. Those are the only 2, but they are very noticeable. Not the best. Story 21. I have a scar on my knee from the time I fell down a flight of stairs, tore my quadriceps, and needed surgery to repair it, a scar on my hand from an insect bite that got infected during summer camp, and a scar on my scalp from the time my brother hit me with a hockey stick. Story 22. Which ones? I have a bunch on my shoulders, back, chest, and face from compulsive skin picking. I have a couple of scars on my hands from accidents that just happen when you were a kid, like getting my finger caught in a door or not being too skilled with knives. I have a scar between 2 of my toes after I needed stitches from slipping on a diving tower and getting a pole between my toes. I also have a scar behind my right ear after 3 surgeries in that ear. Story 23. I had a non-metastatic skin cancer called a carcinoma. I was 34. I had something called Mohs surgery. It is on my face, so I feel self-conscious, but it's getting better year after year. Story 24. 3 hours of sleep between closing the restaurant and then being called in to open. Doing morning preparation, cutting a block of cheese in the rotary slicer. The food gripper would never hold the last 1-inch slab of cheese, so you had to use your hand, being very careful not to push the pad of your thumb into the blade. Story 25. Someone threw a stone that hit me. Motorbike accident. Bicycle accident. A large metal object fell off a cabinet I was moving and cut open my leg. Scalded by hot water. Knife wound. Story 26. I ran into a red pole at full sprint during the fall of kindergarten. I'm red and green colorblind, and there were leaves on the ground along with the grass. I have a big scar where I had stitches on my left eyebrow. Story 27. I was hit by an intoxicated driver, which launched me skidding along the street, and my head got wedged under a car tire, which they had to lift off me. The scar is where my skull split above my right eye. That was years ago now, though. The scar faded. Story 28. Several from a serious car accident, 3 in hip and leg to fit a steel rod through the femur, and a large one from chest to upper back to repair a punctured diaphragm. Story 29. Biggest one from the removal of a kidney cancer surgery. Most interesting one from stepping on a bush stump, which was sharp and went straight through my foot. Story 30. I have hundreds. Most are from self-harm, some are from operations as a premature baby, and some were from being stupid. Don't climb onto a roof and jump off, kids. Just don't. Story 31. My canine partner wasn't feeling it on training day. She usually ran for my arm, but she went for my backside instead. Yeah, I found out later she went right through my protective suit. Over 20 years have passed, and the scar is still there. Story 32. This sounds stupid, but I was at the time. I was being the usual lazy me, trying to grab something from my bed without letting my feet leave the bed. I know some of you have done it. I actually succeeded, but when I pulled up to my bed, my right arm slipped and fell into the metal corner of my bed, and it sliced my arm open. I went to the hospital and it needed stitches. I will never stop being lazy. Story 33. The big one on my chest and neck. I was 1 year old, and my grandma was taking care of me. She was boiling water for coffee, and I pulled the pot with boiling water onto myself. I had a shirt with some plastic in the middle that played music when pressed. The boiled water melted the plastic and made it stick to my skin. During the operation, they took skin from my buttocks to graft onto my chest. The water also fell on a small portion of my hand and a slightly larger portion of my thigh. I don't have many visible scars there either. Story 34. I have several self-harm scars. I try to avoid making any more scars. I was silly in 7th grade, thinking that cutting in the same spot would prevent me from having multiple scars, so I ended up with 4 noticeable scars from that. Aside from those, there's a funny story. I got a scar on my hand after trying to sneakily steal a French fry from the oven while my family was cooking. I got the French fry, and surprisingly, nobody noticed. So, was it a successful French fry robbery? It happened when I was 8. So I'm pretty annoyed that the only accidental scar I have is from this silly story. I forgot I have another scar. I don't really know what it was, but it was like a pimple on my thigh for a good 2 years or more, and then it suddenly became painful. I went to the doctor and got prescriptions for it, and now it's like a hole in my thigh with skin over it. That's about it, I think. Maybe some scarring from my previous ear piercings that I had pierced twice. Story 35. I have a few, none of them interesting. When I was a kid, I was running around and accidentally scratched my arm on the corner of a notice board. I was playing with my cat, and it scratched me and left a scar that remains to this day. I bumped into a stack of chairs, and the bottom part of the legs was surprisingly sharp enough to leave a scar. Story 36. Back in high school, we were in my friend's family's garage. My friend parked and we got out, and right next to her car was her dad's car. But it was parked super close to the wall, so we crab walked in front of the car and tried to walk over it. I spread my front leg as far as I could reach over the car to the other side of the floor, but as I tried to raise my other leg, I didn't see the car's license plate edge, and the inner part of my leg grazed it. I didn't notice anything other than the feeling of my leg hitting it. Once my back leg got over, my friend looked down at my leg, and her face was stricken with panic. There was a long scratch on the inner side of my knee, and it was dripping blood so quickly. I was more in shock at how I didn't feel anything as I watched the blood drip down my leg. She got a paper towel to hold the bleeding until we got inside. It only looked bad, but once the bleeding stopped, it was just a thin but long scratch. No stitches were needed. I used several band-aids and I felt fine. I got a thin long scar on the inner side of my knee back in high school, but now in my 30s, the scar isn't as visible anymore. It was a fun story to tell because people thought I encountered something dangerous, but in reality, my legs were just not long enough to go over the car. I didn't get an infection thanks to the ointment my friend had, and I think it was the plastic border part of the license plate that my leg hit. But why was it sharp? Story 37. When I was 8, my friend and I were seeing who could get closest to the wall without hitting it, while we were practicing our pencil dives at our local swimming pool. She won. I got 11 stitches in my chin. Story 38. Giant lumber delivery to a friend's house. The metal banding was just opened with extremely jagged edges in his yard. Being a kid in the 1980s, we were having our hourly unsupervised game of tag. Running full speed in shorts opened a 10-inch cut across my shin. Story 39. Fell down the side of a cliff in Greece, bounced a bit, and landed in an ant nest. Dad had to throw me in the sea to clean me up, but a chunk of my right foot was kind of flapping and gouged out. Now it just looks like I've been hammered with a nail through the front, and it's left a silvery scar. Story 40. I enjoy saying that it's from a ricochet when I was a soldier, but actually it was mole removal. I think that's what it's called. The scar from this surgery is so ugly because I moved a lot while recovering, so it is believable. Story 41. I have a scar on the inside and outside of my bottom lip from hitting my chin on concrete while jumping into a pool right near the edge. I bit through my lip, though I didn't go to the hospital. All I remember now is that it hurt to eat ketchup for around 2 weeks after. Story 42. Most of my scars are from a 5-year-long self-harm addiction. I also have several piercing scars and a cigarette burn scar on my finger because I was drunk and decided to use my hand as an ashtray. Story 43. The deep one under my eyebrow is from when I was 12. My father tried to slap me, and I jerked my head back, so his nail cut me open. This was after a black eye on the other eye and a fat lip. He thought I was going through his things in his drawer. He was right where the corded phone was. I was absent-mindedly opening and closing the drawer with my foot while I was on the phone. When he asked me if I went through his things, I said no because I didn't. I didn't know that his things had been knocked over. He was angry at me for lying. Father is in parentheses because who treats their child this way? Story 44. Dog held my arm with her claws as I waited for search and rescue to come pick me up. Many deep scratches that all look like self-harm scars in my opinion. I don't cover them up. Story 45. I tripped and fell on a gravel driveway at 10 years old. The other time, I scraped my hand on a piece of wire on a gate at 18 years old. I have fallen off horses, spent a few weeks in the hospital, have a collection of slings, wraps, and braces, and had my appendix removed. But those are the scars that have lingered. Story 46. Which one? I have several from work. Laugh out loud. The one on my thumb is the worst. Permanently changed the nail, has this crease going the length of it. And yeah, it doesn't go away, laugh out loud. Story 47, mostly from surgeries. I've had 25 operations in my 72 years. The biggest are from a partial colectomy and a liver transplant. The two of them look like a broken cross. Story 48. Music stand started to fall over, went to grab it, but my foot hit first. Sideshow Bob would have been proud. Just kind of stunned me, laughed, and looked at my friend. Was met with a look of horror. Dude, you're bleeding everywhere.